The stakes of the Michigan-Ohio State game have been changed forever. A game that used to mean the difference between making the Rose Bowl or, in recent times, making the Big Ten championship game may have been reduced to nothing more than a determining factor of a playoff seeding. I'll discuss that coming up next on the Point a Minute show here at Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. Welcome to the Point a Minute show on Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football, where we average one outstanding take for every 1 minute of video. My name is Mackenzie, and I will be flying solo tonight. Unfortunately, Cliff slipped on some ice while attempting to do his very best Jalen Milroe impression and fractured his wrist. So unfortunately, he's on the injured reserve list this week, and I'm sure I speak for all of you watching when I say the show won't be the same without him, because he's not here to balance out my bafflingly bad takes. All right, with that, let's get into it. So I was listening to Josh Pate the other night, and he did a segment on his show on whether or not the Michigan versus Ohio State game still means anything, or has it been diluted since the loser of the game can still go on to win a national championship, which we saw happen this year. In his segment, he quotes a listener who tweeted, or X'd, I guess we would say now, that he thought that it was actually good that we have the 12-team playoff because the rivalry has become quite a bit more toxic recently. I guess he wasn't watching during the Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler era? I don't know. But he says that it's gotten so toxic, in fact, that we now have fans saying that we want the stakes of the game to actually be lowered so that fans aren't as emotionally invested in it and therefore don't do things like, make death threats against the family of the losing coach. Josh Pate made the point that, emotionally speaking, the game will never diminish in its intensity because the fans are just not going to let it. After all, the entire seasons at these schools are judged by whether or not you beat the rival. So yeah, emotionally speaking, the fans are definitely going to continue being invested in this game, and frankly, they should be. It is the greatest rivalry in all of sports, and possibly the most vitriolic, which is why the highs of winning the game are so high, and the lows are, well, really low. Apparently enough to make you want to call for the head of the losing coach. Literally. In this case, actually. I agree with Josh Pate up to a point. I agree that fans right now are extremely invested in this game, but I think that the 12-team playoff is actually going to change that over time, and I believe that for 3 reasons. My first reason, the stakes of the game are no longer as high as they used to be, and I'm sure everyone knows this concept in economics that when the cost to purchase a good goes down, the more consumers are capable of purchasing said product. Now, I know we're not here for an economics lecture, but just go with me on it. That exact thing is what has already played out with the 12-team playoff. The barrier to entry is lower, therefore you don't need to accomplish everything that you used to get into the playoff. You can have 2 losses. You can lose to a 6-5 team at home, not win your conference, not even make the conference championship game, and yet still be allowed to play for a national title in the postseason. For that reason alone, the stakes of the game are not as high as they used to be. But that was just this year, right? Like, Michigan's not always going to be down, and they're not going to be down for so long that the game will probably mean more in the future. Well, I disagree, but that brings me to reason number 2. Now, I don't disagree that Michigan won't be down long. I think I said that right. Michigan won't be down long. In fact, I think they have a great shot at winning the Big Ten title this year. But so does Ohio State. So right now, I think the fans are emotionally invested in this game. But what happens when they meet again in the Big Ten championship? The very next week, even. I mean, what happens when they potentially meet again in the playoffs? The more times they play the game, the less impact each individual iteration of the game has. And frankly, the only iteration of the game I think people will care about is the one that is played last. If the last time they meet in a season is in the playoffs, pardon me, I have notes here, but if the last time they meet in the season is in the playoffs, that's the one people will care about. If it's the Big Ten championship, then that's going to be the one that they care about. That makes the final game of the regular season nothing more than basically a coin toss to see whoever gets whatever postseason ranking. Now, reason number 3 is a bit more of a general criticism of the 12-team playoff. I think this iteration of the playoff answers a question that did not deserve to be answered. For the longest time during the BCS era, people talked about how all sorts of different teams were better than the ones actually playing for a national title and therefore should have been included in the national championship game rather than the ones that were actually in it. The 14 playoff was meant to fix that, but instead, in my opinion, just created more of a problem when people started fighting about which team deserved that number 4 spot the most. The 12-team playoff was meant to dispel those concerns, and Ohio State didn't exactly help anything by losing 2 regular season games, one of which was a baffling loss at best, then missing out on the conference championship game, and then going and winning the national title anyway. But I think that's actually kind of the point. We always knew that despite losing to Michigan, Ohio State was good enough to win the national championship. The problem was that under the 4-team playoff and the BCS era, they wouldn't have had the chance to play for it because they didn't deserve it. And that's what I mean when I say the playoffs answered a question that didn't deserve to be answered. The college football postseason was meant to reward the most deserving, not the most capable, but now with the 12-team playoff, we have a system that rewards the most capable, but punishes the most deserving. There's no better example of this, in my opinion, than the rematch that happened between Oregon and Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Oregon already beat Ohio State. Why do they have to play again? Of course, we know the reason is because Ohio State was always good enough to beat and even destroy Oregon on paper, but if that's the case, why didn't they do it in Eugene? Instead, the 12-team playoff basically gave them a mulligan. Now, I'll wrap this up by saying that I don't in any way want to diminish Ohio State's national title at all. That probably sounds super contradictory because of everything that I've said up to this point, but I mean, I don't want that to be the case. They have a lot of players on that team that are super easy to root for. I've given Ryan Day a fair share of crap on this channel and our own channel, but I was happy to see him get the win and hopefully spare his family from future death threats. Their playoff run was nothing short of incredible given how their regular season ended. So my beef isn't with them, it's with the playoffs. But I'll leave it right there for now. Do you think the 12-team playoff is making the game less and less meaningful? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more from Michigan football at the voice of college football.